The world is simple, and happiness is within the reach of every man, instantly. Now, does that sound, I don't know, too good to be true?
Maybe a bit, or perhaps like a real challenge to how we usually think about things.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take your sources, the books, the articles, the things you send us, and we really try to pull out the key nuggets of knowledge, help you get to grips with it all.
And today we're diving into something truly, well, potentially transformative. It's The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga.
Right, the one written like a dialogue.
Exactly. Between this skeptical young guy and a wise philosopher, it basically distills the ideas of Alfred Adler.
Adler, okay, one of the big three with Freud and Jung, right?
That's him. And his ideas are often quite counterintuitive, but also, I think, incredibly freeing.
So our mission today is really to unpack these core ideas, to reiterate them, try to understand them properly.
Yeah, so if you've ever felt kind of stuck because of your past, or maybe overwhelmed by relationships, or just not sure how to find happiness,
then this deep dive is probably for you. It's definitely not just theory, is it? It feels like a real challenge to how you live day to day.
it really is. So let's get started.
Okay, so let's tackle that first big one. This core idea that really sets Adler apart.
Mm-hmm.
The claim that our present, our future, they aren't determined by our past.
Mm-hmm.
Which, goes against so much self-help, so much of how we talk about things. We always look back, don't we?
We absolutely do. Think about Freudian psychology that's all about aetiology, finding the past cause for the present effect. I'm anxious because of this childhood thing.
Right. Standard stuff.
But Adler flips that completely. He talks about teleology. It's all about the present goal.
Goal.
Yes. The philosopher in the book is really blunt about it. He actually denies trauma as a deterministic force. He says, no experience is in itself a cause of our success or failure.
Wow.
Instead, and this is the kicker, we make out of them whatever suits our purposes. We choose the meaning we give to past events to fit our current goals.
That's a lot to take in. So the past is there, it influences us, sure, but it doesn't lock us in.
Precisely. It doesn't determine us.
Can you give us a concrete example? How does that play out?
Okay, think about the young man's friend in the book. The one who's a recluse, can't leave his room.
Yeah, the hikikomori.
Right. So the teleological view isn't he can't go out because he was bullied or had bad parents.
Which is what you'd normally assume.
Exactly. Instead, Adler would say he has the goal of not going out. And he creates the feelings, the anxiety, the fear as a means to achieve that goal.
Creates them voluntarily.
Well, maybe not consciously, but the feelings serve a purpose. Maybe the goal is to get his parents' constant attention and worry. Or maybe it's to avoid the challenges, the potential failures of interacting with society. The anxiety is the tool, not the root cause.
That is a really challenging thought. What about something like anger? The youth in the book talks about yelling at a waiter who spilled coffee. That feels pretty direct, doesn't it? An unavoidable reaction.
Mm-hmm. It feels that way, absolutely. But the philosopher argues that anger, too, can be a tool, a means to an end.
How so?
He uses this great illustration. A mother is shouting at her daughter, really angry. Then the phone rings.
Okay.
Instantly, she switches her voice. Calm, polite, professional on the phone. Then she hangs up and boom, back to yelling.
Ah, I see. So the anger wasn't totally uncontrollable.
Exactly. It demonstrates it was a means she was using, maybe to dominate the situation, to make her daughter submit quickly without needing a long explanation. It's faster, less effort than rational discussion sometimes.
So if I'm getting this right, we're not just puppets of our past experiences or even our immediate emotions. We're actually always moving towards some kind of goal, even if we have no idea what it is.
That's the core of it. It's profound, really. Adler is saying our lives aren't just handed to us. They're not a script we're forced to follow. We are actively choosing them, moment by moment.
Okay. And this idea of choice, it leads straight into another huge Adlerian concept, right? That people can change.
Yes. And crucially, that happiness is within reach for everyone.
No exceptions whatsoever, I think the book says.
That's a line. And this is where Adler introduces the term lifestyle. It's basically what we call personality or disposition.
Okay.
But the key Adlerian point is that this lifestyle isn't fixed. It's something we choose for ourselves. Often unconsciously, maybe around age 10, we sort of settle on a way of seeing the world and our place in it.
Chosen. But if it's chosen,
then it can be chosen again, rechosen. It's not set in stone. We can change our fundamental orientation to life.
But hang on, if someone is deeply unhappy, it feels wrong to say they chose it. Nobody
Yeah.
actually wants to be miserable, do they?
Right, that's the paradox, isn't it? The philosopher tackles this head on. He argues that unhappiness isn't bad luck, it's not circumstance, it's actually a choice.
A choice. How can unhappiness be beneficial?
Well, the person might unconsciously judge that being unhappy serves some purpose for them. Maybe it gets them sympathy or it gives them an excuse not to try, not to risk failure. It links back to that Socratic idea, no one desires evil,
Man.
meaning people always choose what they perceive somehow as good for themselves at that moment, even if that choice leads to what we call unhappiness. Adler calls it lacking the courage to be happy, because happiness often requires courage to act, to connect, to risk.
Wow. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. The book makes this incredibly bold claim. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems.
Yeah, that one stops you in your tracks, doesn't it?
It really does. Even things that feel intensely personal, like my own self-doubt or feelings of inadequacy, how can that be about relationships?
It sounds broad, but Adler's view is that even those deeply internal feelings, like self-dislike or inferiority, are fundamentally rooted in how we relate to or perceive our relation to other people.
Explain that a bit more.
Okay, so the youth in the book says he dislikes himself. The philosopher counters, suggesting he actually resolved not to like himself.
Why would anyone do that?
As a sort of preemptive defense, to avoid being hurt or rejected in relationships. If you already believe you have shortcomings, if you focus on them, then if someone does snub you, well, you have a ready-made explanation. It protects you, in a way, from the potential pain of genuine connection and vulnerability.
So it's like an unconscious strategy to manage the fear of relationships.
Kind of, yeah. A way to control the narrative, maybe.
Okay, so what about feeling inferior? Is that always a problem? Sometimes it motivates you, right? Like wanting to get better at something.
Absolutely. Adler makes a crucial distinction here. There's a healthy feeling of inferiority, which is basically universal. It's that drive to improve, what he calls the pursuit of superiority.
Like a chef wanting to cook better.
Exactly. Or an athlete wanting to run faster. It's a positive stimulant for growth. That's healthy.
But then there's the inferiority complex.
Right, and that's when you start using that feeling of inferiority as an excuse. Oh, I can't get that job because I didn't go to the right university, or I can't ask them out because I'm not good looking enough. It becomes a way to avoid making realistic efforts to sidestep responsibility.
And what about the flip side? The person who seems almost too confident, maybe boastful.
Adler sees that often as a superiority complex. It's like an overcompensation, an indulgence in a fabricated sense of being superior.
Fabricated.
Yeah. Adler actually says the one who boasts does so only out of a feeling of inferiority. It's like they're trying to convince themselves and everyone else because deep down they lack genuine confidence. It's an inverted inferiority.
That makes sense. And the book mentions something really interesting here, bragging about one's own misfortune. How does that fit in?
It's a subtle form of the superiority complex, actually, trying to become special through suffering.
Special through suffering.
Think about someone who constantly talks about their bad luck, their health issues, their terrible past. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes. It's a way to get attention, control others through guilt or sympathy, or excuse themselves from having to try. They make their misfortune, their identity, their claim to being special without having to actually do anything constructive.
It's a really sharp observation. Okay, so if all our problems, deep down, are about navigating these interpersonal relationships,
Yeah.
what's the way out? What's the Adlerian solution?
The core solution is the separation of tasks.
Separation of tasks. Okay, what does that mean practically?
It means calmly, clearly figuring out what is your responsibility, your task, and what is someone else's task. And then the hard part, don't intervene in their tasks and don't let them intervene in yours.
Right. Can you give a clear example?
Sure, the classic one is a child studying. Whether the child actually studies, does their homework, learns the material that's ultimately the child's task.
Because they face the consequences, good or bad.
Exactly. When parents constantly nag, command, or punish them about studying, they're intruding on the child's task.
And often, Adler would say, the parents are doing it for their own reasons, right? Like appearing to be good parents or needing control.
Precisely. It's often driven by the parent's goals, not purely the child's well-being. Or think about your boss. If your boss is throwing a tantrum, being unreasonable.
Yeah.
Their anger, their lack of control, that's their task to manage. It's not your task to fix them or absorb their anger or feel responsible for it. Your task is to do your work diligently and professionally, regardless of their mood.
Okay, that sounds incredibly freeing. but maybe a little cold. Like you just don't care about the other person.
No, it's not about being cold or uncaring. It's
Yeah.
not non-interference in the sense of apathy. Think of the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
Right.
You can offer support, encouragement, help when asked and when appropriate, but you respect the boundary. You respect that ultimately their choices and the consequences are theirs. This applies even in close families.
That's tough, though, drawing that line.
It is tough. It can feel harsh sometimes. But Adler believed this separation, this respect for boundaries, is the essential gateway to true freedom and genuinely healthy relationships. You stop carrying burdens that aren't yours, and you stop trying to control things you can't control.
And this connects really tightly to another challenging idea, doesn't it? The idea that we shouldn't actually seek recognition from others.
Yes, very closely connected.
Which feels, well, it feels like swimming upstream.
Yeah.
We're practically wired to want praise, to want approval.
We are, largely because of what Adler calls reward and punishment education. From childhood, we learn, do this, get praise, do that, get told off.
So we learn to act based on external validation.
Exactly. Adler argues this leads to a mistaken lifestyle, where our actions, even our sense of self-worth, become dependent on whether someone else approves or not. You're essentially living your life based on other people's standards.
But what's so wrong with wanting praise? Doesn't it feel good? Doesn't it build self-esteem when someone recognizes your efforts?
It feels good momentarily, sure, but the philosopher points out something subtle. The act of praise itself often implies a hierarchy. It's passing judgment by a person of ability on a person of no ability. Think about it. You praise a child or an employee. It's often a top-down dynamic.
A vertical relationship, the book calls it.
Precisely. And if your main goal is to get that praise, you're letting their standards, their yardstick, define your freedom and your worth. You end up living, in a sense, other people's lives, constantly trying to meet their expectations.
So real freedom comes from not caring how you're judged.
Essentially, yes. Not being overly concerned with external judgment, finding your validation internally, it's a huge shift.
Okay, so if praise is problematic because it reinforces these vertical relationships, how do we build healthy connections? What's the alternative?
The alternative is cultivating horizontal relationships.
Horizontal, meaning?
Meaning, you treat all people fundamentally as equal but not the same. Everyone has different roles, skills, experiences, but there's no inherent hierarchy. We're all just fellow human beings walking side by side. This automatically removes the space for inferiority or superiority complexes to really take root.
So in a horizontal relationship, instead of praise, what's a better way to acknowledge someone?
Simple gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Unlike praise, which is a form of judgment, however positive, thank you, is just a straightforward expression of appreciation for a contribution. When you hear a genuine thank you, you get direct feedback that you've been helpful, that you've made a contribution.
And that feeling of contribution is key, isn't it?
It's absolutely central, that feeling of, I am useful to someone, I have contributed. That's where Adler says true self-worth comes from. It's intrinsic.
Okay. And talking about relationships, the book uses the word confidence in a very specific way. It's not quite how we normally use it.
Right. It's different from just believing someone is reliable based on evidence. Adlerian confidence means unconditional belief in others. It's choosing to trust proactively, without demanding proof or security first.
Unconditional trust. Isn't that risky?
Right.
What if you get taken advantage of?
It can feel risky, yes.
Yeah.
But Adler argues that doubt is what poisons relationships from the start. People sense when you don't trust them. If you live in constant fear of being betrayed or let down, you can never build deep, meaningful connections.
So it takes courage.
Exactly. It takes the courage to overcome the fear of being taken advantage of. And where does that courage come from? Ultimately, Adler says, it comes from self-acceptance. When you accept yourself, flaws and all, you're less dependent on others' actions for your sense of security.
Okay, let's tie this together. If all problems are interpersonal, where does happiness come from in Adler's view?
Happiness for Adler is the feeling of contribution.
Just that, the feeling of being useful.
It's the core of it. It's also tied into what he calls community feeling, which involves seeing others not as competitors, but as comrades, and feeling like you have a place, a sense of belonging within that community. Contribution, seeing others as comrades, having a place to belong, that's the tripod of happiness.
But does contribution mean you constantly have to be doing things, achieving things, being productive in the conventional sense? What about people who can't? Like someone severely disabled or very old or even a baby?
That's such an important point, and Adler makes a beautiful distinction here. Contribution isn't just about the level of acts, what you physically do. It's also perhaps more fundamentally about the level of being.
Level of being.
Yes, someone can be incredibly useful, can contribute profoundly, simply by existing. Think about how much joy and meaning a newborn brings just by being there, or how the presence of an elderly grandparent, even if they need care, can enrich a family's life, teach compassion, create connection.
So their mere existence is a contribution.
Exactly. If you feel grateful for someone just being alive, you're acknowledging their worth at the level of being. And crucially, if you feel that you are of use to someone, even just by being present for them, then you can have a real sense of your own worth. It doesn't depend on external validation or grand achievements.
That's a really comforting and liberating idea. It takes the pressure off constant doing.
It really does.
So thinking about this level of being and focusing on contribution, how does this change how we should approach our lives day to day? Do we need these grand, overarching life plans that society tells us are so important?
Well, Adler challenges that too. He contrasts two ways of looking at life. One is kinetic, like a line moving from a starting point to a destination, focused on the end goal.
Like climbing a mountain to reach the summit.
Right. The other view, the one Adler advocates, is energial. Think of life not as a line, but as a series of moments, dots.
Yeah.
They're points. And the focus is on living each moment, each dot, as completely as possible, like dancing.
Dancing, how so?
When you dance, the goal isn't to arrive somewhere specific at the end. The goal is the dancing itself. Each step, each movement is the point. Life, for Adler, should be like that. There's no single destination you have to reach to have lived successfully.
So, forget the 5-year plans.
Not necessarily forget planning altogether, but shift the focus. Don't postpone living until you reach some future goal. Live earnestly here and now. Concentrate on what you can do today in this moment. By doing that, you are already dancing the dance.
Well, like the example of the aspiring novelist who never writes.
Exactly. He was living in the, if only I had more time, more inspiration instead of just writing now. He was postponing life, waiting for the perfect kinetic path instead of engaging in the energial moment.
And this ties back, maybe surprisingly, to that idea of the courage to be normal, which sounds, well, boring. Why is being normal courageous?
It sounds boring because society often pushes us to be special, doesn't it?
Definitely. Stand out, be exceptional.
Right. But Adler suggests that this intense desire to be a special being, whether through being exceptionally good or exceptionally bad, like a delinquent, or even exceptionally busy, like a workaholic, is often a shortcut. A pursuit of easy superiority.
Easy superiority.
It's a way to get attention, to feel significant, without maybe doing the harder, quieter work of genuine contribution and connection in everyday life. The courage to be normal is the courage to accept yourself just as you are, without needing to constantly prove your specialness.
So it's about finding value in the ordinary.
Yes, finding harmony in life, accepting your unique but perhaps not extraordinary place, not getting obsessed with the maybe 1 in 10 people who might dislike or criticize you, but focusing on the broader community and your connection to it. It's radical acceptance, really.
Wow. Okay, we've covered so much ground. Let's try to synthesize this. If someone listening wants one key takeaway, one guiding principle from Adler to hold on to, what would it be?
The guiding star, as the book calls it, is contribution to others.
Contribution to others.
As long as you keep that in sight, how can I be useful? How can I contribute? Even just by being, then you won't lose your way. That, combined with self-acceptance and confidence in others, that's the recipe for community feeling. And community feeling is happiness.
And then, maybe the most challenging part, the title itself.
Yeah.
The courage to be disliked.
That's the final piece, isn't it?
What does it really mean in practice?
It means understanding that freedom is being disliked by other people.
Freedom is out being disliked.
It means living according to your own principles, making choices based on the separation of tasks, contributing in your own way, without being paralyzed by the fear that someone, somewhere, won't approve.
So it's not about trying to be disliked.
Not at all. It's not about being obnoxious or antisocial. It's simply accepting that if you live authentically and freely according to your values, it's inevitable that some people will dislike you or disagree with you. And that's okay. That disapproval is the price you pay for your freedom.
And it's worth paying.
Adler would say it's absolutely worth paying.
So putting it all together, it feels like many of us operate as if the keys to our happiness, our relationships, are held by other people. or by our past, or by circumstances.
Exactly. We think the cards are stacked against us or held by someone else. We live trying to please them or react to them or overcome the past.
But Adler's saying we're wrong.
He's saying, fundamentally, yes. By understanding the separation of tasks, finding the courage to contribute, accepting ourselves, and crucially, having the courage to be disliked, you realize you hold the cards.
You hold all the
For
cards.
your own life, your own happiness, your own freedom, right here, right now. The choice has always been yours.
What an incredibly profound deep dive. That book, The Courage to Be Disliked, it really does shake up so many assumptions, doesn't it? About life, relationships, happiness. It's almost unsettling how simple yet radical it is.
It really is. And it's important to remember, Adlerian psychology isn't just a cool theory to think about. It's a practice. It demands real courage.
Yeah, the book mentions it can take, what, half the number of years one has lived to truly internalize and live these ideas.
Exactly. It's not an overnight fix. It takes time, real effort, and a willingness to sit with ideas that might feel uncomfortable or contradictory at first. You have to peel back those layers of conditioning.
So the core messages we've reiterated today. Your past doesn't have to define your future. Your problems mostly boil down to how you navigate relationships. And real happiness, it comes from that feeling of contribution without needing everyone else to pat you on the back.
It's a powerful call to action, isn't it? A call to take radical personal responsibility.
Definitely.
And the ultimate takeaway, the most revolutionary thought perhaps, is simply this. You are the one who determines your own life, here and now. The choice to be happy, the choice to be free, the choice to define the meaning of your life. It's always yours.
That really is a provocative thought to end on. If the world truly is simple, and life is too, what are you going to choose to do with your here and now? What's one courageous step you could take today?
We hope this deep dive has given you a lot to chew on, maybe even inspired you to explore Adler's ideas further yourself. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep taking those courageous steps.